All right. So let me read this again. Shall they not rise up suddenly that shall bite thee, and shall awake that shall vex thee, and thou shalt be for booties unto them, because thou hast spoiled many nations. And all the remnant of the people shall spoil thee because of men's blood, and for the violence of the land and of the city and all that dwell therein. And ever since Esau's been in power, all he's been doing is shedding blood. When you look at the history of America, America's been in war over, I would say, over 200 times versus the amount of time they've been at peace for. So ever since America was gotten from the North American Indians, these Edomites have been constantly going to war. The American government has been constantly at war. All right. And as you have it in war, blood is shed. Okay. And yet and still America is still at war. Now we can point to the recent nations, now pointing to the recent nations such as the people of Iran, as well as the people of Russia, the people of China. And as we fast forward to the times of recently, America's at war with Russia, America's at war with China, Iran, Syria, and all of these different places that they have their military bases at. Reading on, verse 9, woe to him that covetous an evil covetousness to his house, that he may set his nest on high, that he may be delivered from the power of evil. Thou hast consulted shame to thy house by cutting off many people, and has sinned against thy soul. Like down here in the UK, Great Britain, or should I say the people in this country, hate and absolutely have a hatred against Tony Blair because of what he did down in back. He sent the soldiers down in places like Iraq and Baghdad, and the soldiers were killed because of this war under the guise of Saddam Hussein having weapons of mass destruction, and it came out that he never had access to weapons of mass destruction. And as well as can't forget in the midst of this, President Bush, Tony Blair and President Bush. And now the world is looking at these Western countries as the problem. So they have brought what? Shame upon themselves for the violence that they've caused, and as well as the violence that they've brought upon the saints. You know, there's so much history and there's so much dirt that they've done when it comes to our people. And all of that has been aired out towards the world, as well as being that we have this internet being used by many people, and they've done the research, and they've researched things about the American system. And I remember years ago, the prime minister that was of Iran, Ahmadinejad, his name was. And as you have it from time to time, I believe it was the UN building. I believe he was speaking at the UN, if I'm correct. But he was at some conference, and he was speaking about the enslavement of our people at the conference. And all of those European nations, all of those people that represented their country, they all got up out of their chair and walked out of the council. So their shame is being exposed for the wrongs that they've committed on the face of the earth, and especially towards our people, God's children, the Israelites. Verse 10, thou hast consulted shame to thy house by cutting off many people, and hast sinned against thy soul. And now other nations have been awakened to realize that America and Great Britain are two bloodiest nations because of what they've done across the waters, have you will, especially when it concerns the two countries which were in Baghdad, just straight up and down slaughtering those people. So that stigma of violence is upon them. So this is the book of Habakkuk chapter 2 verse 10. And thou hast consulted shame to thy house by cutting off many people, and has sinned against thy soul. And that involves slaughtering our people, beginning with the North American Indians, and also as well as grabbing us and putting us in slavery against our will. The people of Judah, and how they were treated as they were slaves. So all of this has been aired out due to this internet. And people around the world know how we've been treated wrongfully. Let me read this again. Thou hast consulted shame to thy house by cutting off many people, and have sinned against thy soul, as I've explained, by the violence that they've caused. For the stone shall cry out of the wall, and the beam out of the timber shall answer it. Woe to him that buildeth a town of blood, and establish a city by iniquity. Behold, it is not of the Lord of hosts, that the people shall labor in the very fire, and the people shall weary themselves for very vanity. And what are they wearying themselves of? By the multitude of their sorcery and their witchcraft. For the very vanity. The vanity of what? Prolonging their violent society. And I just got to back up and elaborate a little on verse 12. Woe to him that buildeth a town of blood, and establish a city by iniquity. America was established by blood. We all know the history. This is facts. America became the America off of the backs of the slaughtering of the North American Indians, the so-called North American Indians of the tribe of Gad, and as well as the people of the tribe of Reuben, the so-called Seminole Indians as well. All right. So they've built a society based on blood, and established the city by iniquity, which means a multitude of sins. And as well as down here in the UK as well, because down here in the UK, a lot of our people got slaughtered, and a lot of our buildings and our bridges were burnt to nothing. And that's how the Edomites became prominent down here in the UK. Okay. So let's read on. Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 13. Behold, it is not of the Lord of hosts. And I can't forget, I want to say this as well. And after they did all of that they've done unto us down here in the UK, they basically threw us on them cargo slave ships and sent us to the new world, have you will, as well. So they won't tell you about how you had certain Jakes, you had a certain amount of Jakes, that were conquered, that were taken over by these Edomites, and they actually sent them to the new world, put them into slavery. All right, because you have more this history that's being spewed out, which is a truth, that the bulk of us did come from West Africa, but some of us also came from England, and we were shipped off to America too. The ones of us that were in England at the time, around the 15th, 16th century, there was a war that was going on between the Edomites and those that were considered the Jacobites, and they were taking over basically. And this was and I'm really now going to fast forward even to the time of when Oliver Cromwell came in to the position of power. From that time, that's when Jake was already out, and these Israelites were already conquered by that time. And by that time, they were shipped in on them cargo slave ships to go to the Americas, especially North America. So they won't talk about that. You hear more talk about the West African slave trade, but you won't really hear too much about the slave trade that happened down here in the UK. You had two major slave ports down here in the UK, Liverpool and as well as Bristol, but Liverpool was number one. Okay. And that's why down here in the UK, they don't really teach about slavery like America does. Because if they really went into it, what we would find out is the fact that they've actually pillaged our land and slaughtered the people and burnt down buildings to possess the land, which was known as what we call it, the United Kingdom. Anyway, so that's enough on that. On verse 12, verse 13, behold, it is not of the Lord of hosts, that the people shall labor in the very fire, and the people shall weary themselves for the very vanity. And what are they wearying themselves of? What? the sorcery and the witchcraft, and it tells you that. Let's go and get that in the book of Jeremiah. I believe it is. Anyway, Isaiah 47 verse 9. But these two things shall come to thee in a moment, in one day, the loss of children and widowhood, and they shall come upon thee in their perfection, for the multitude of thy sorceries, and for the great abundance of thine enchantments. For thou hast trusted in thy wickedness, and thou hast said, none seeth me. Thy wisdom and thy knowledge have perverted thee, and thou hast said in thine heart, I am, and none else besides me. Hold on, wait there. Yeah, this is it right here. This is it. This is what I wanted to read. This is verse 12. It says, stand now with thine enchantments, and with the multitude of thy sorceries, wherein thou hast labored from thy youth. If so be thou shalt be able to profit, if so be thou mayest prevail. Thou art wearied, this is it right here, in the multitude of thy counsels. And let now the astrologers and the stargazers and the monthly prognosticators stand up and save thee from these things that shall come upon thee. And when you look at these elitists and these politicians that get together, they do look tired, man. Because they're doing too much. They're thinking too hard on their agenda. And they're doing something that's not going to work in their favor even. All right. It sounds good. It looks good as far as the eyes can see. But when you're actually in it, it's not going to be beneficial for even them, because they're going to create a world that's inhumanely possible to dwell in. But see, the Lord is going to allow them to do what they have to do, because the Spirit is on them. The Lord put the Spirit upon them to formulate this one world system, a world that doesn't make any sense. And in this world, and in the midst of them setting up this system, they're gonna fulfill the prophecy of bringing in this technology, which will be the implantable mark. And once they bring that mark in, then basically it's going to spell disaster for this world, this whole entire empire. All right. And many other prophecies too that they're going to fulfill, which is going to lead to the downfall. So let's read this again. It says, thou art wearied in the multitude of thy counsels, and let now the astrologers and the stargazers and the monthly prognosticators stand up and save thee from these things that shall come upon thee. So all of the sorcery and the witchcraft, the stargazers and the monthly prognosticators, it's not going to save these people. It's not going to save them from the ordained wrath to come. I wanted to just say wrath, but I have to use the term ordained, because it's ordained of this world for it to be destroyed, and as well as the people in it to be destroyed. I'm mainly talking about the kings of this world. It's ordained that the Heavenly Father is going to destroy them.